The Lord is my light and my salvation. I will fear no one. The Lord protects me from all danger. I will never be afraid. My hiding place, you are my refuge, my refuge. You're my hiding place, you are my refuge, my refuge. My papa, oh, my papa, oh, my papa, papa, I love you. My papa, oh, my papa, oh, my papa, papa, oh, my papa, oh, my papa, papa, I love you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for taking the time and your commitment and attention to this matter in Nigeria. A lot of you are vocal and outspoken on this situation in Nigeria and experts in your field. So we appreciate taking the time to join us today for this presentation. My section is on the actual document itself, the data report called Nigeria's Silent Slaughter, the genocide in Nigeria and the implications for the international community. As you see, this report was compiled by ourselves, the International Committee on Nigeria, along with our partners in the UK and in Nigeria, called the International Organization for Peace Building and Social Justice, also known as PSJ. So we appreciate them as well joining us on this call today. Yeah, the book, the purpose of the Silent Slaughter Data Report, we wanted to be a voice to those in Nigeria who have been silenced, thus the silent slaughter. People are dying, people are being killed in numbers for many years. So we want to give them the voice to speak, and we want to use this document this time to do that. We know that atrocities and human rights violations occur every day. Our main focus is to demonstrate genocide in Nigeria. And we've just kind of selected the dates from January 1st, 2000 to January 31st, 2020. Kind of give us the 20 years of slaughter is what we're kind of looking at here in this report. The contents of the Silent Slaughter Data Report. Content of the Silent Slaughter Data Report. Inside are different sections and different areas of focus. So the initial pages, there's some forwards from prominent voices like Representative Frank Wolf, who's on this call. Thank you. Bishop Ben Kwashti, who may be joining us, and then Baroness Cox, who is with us as well. So these three just kind of give us the forward. And then we have our asks and expectations written by Stephen Inada and John Gungwar, along with Richard Ikebe, Dr. Richard Ikebe from PSJ. We have a legal brief prepared by our Nigerian legal expert, Professor Joash Ojo. He was assisted by others, and it was a great, lengthy process that details historical and gives evidence to the fact there is a genocide happening in Nigeria. And contributions on genocide from Dr. Greg Stanton and Amber Waldo from Jubilee campaign. Of course, we got maps and charts that are using our data that we collected. We have testimonies on victims from Leah Sharibu, specifically her mother, Chibok girls. Oops, there's a typo there. Various Fulani attacks, especially in Dara land amongst the Dara people, Rigwe land in Plateau State, in Niango and surrounding areas, and various martyrs who have been killed through the years for their faith. We have incident reports that were submitted by the Benue State government and the Taraba State government. We have the Benue State government representative on the line with us today. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Dura. And we look forward to hearing from her. The international recognition of just various things in our legislature, from the Senate to the Congress, as well as certain things happening in the UK and EU, just as it relates to Nigeria and the issues that are happening there. And over 100 pages of appendix data that include incident reports that we've compiled, specific victims reports from the field, list of victims, and much more. So the book is laid out quite lengthy, over 300 pages, but we needed it to show the genocide is happening. And again, we say the 20 years of slaughter, and the data is not just specifically for Boko Haram, but it covers the Fulani militants as well. So we've been, collecting these and and they're organized from reputable sources. We've done research on these incidents and charts. We made charts from that that indicate that genocide does exist, and we have the evidence here that's showing that it's critical here that the killings in Nigeria have increased considerably in the past 5 years. So again, 20 years of slaughter. Our main focus is to demonstrate genocide in Nigeria from January 1st, 2000 to January 31st, 2020. We recognize there are several types of perpetrators, but we've concentrated on 2 main actors. We've tried to break it down into about 9 subcategories of actors, or main categories of actors. But this report is focusing on the genocide caused by Boko Haram, ISIS, ISIL, Islamic State, ISWAP, and Al Qaeda. And then secondly, Fulani, herder, militant extremists in that category. Our data sources, we collected and compiled them from the ACLA data, as well as the Nigerian Security Tracker from the Council for Foreign Relations. Looked at the START data from the University of Maryland, as well as our own app users on the field using the Eyewitness to Atrocities app that was developed by the International Bar Association in London. So these sources, these 4 sources we've brought in together, we've merged them, we've deleted redundant data, we tried to look at it further, tried to verify sources, tried to verify that this actually happened, looked at sources, and then from that got our actor category and made our assessment on that data. So if we look at the data, this is just kind of a chart showing the orange is the deaths in Nigeria, the blue is the region that we kind of looked at in the West Africa region. We got Boko Haram at 9,619 for the region, but Nigeria alone had 43,000. Fulani herder militants, we had 18,000 in Nigeria. And then all of the actors, which include ethnic banditry, which is a new category, as well as political and other things, 34,000. So you see that's the data just is incredible to see how much life is lost in the past 20 years. And this is a map here showing the death incidents of all actors, various colors here, from 2015 to 2020. The Boko Haram, Fulani, government, as well as those deaths that are caused by the government, ethnic, local militia, religious, ethnic. Those are the top categories where there's death category. And you see the red is primarily Boko Haram up from the northeast, and the Fulani is the orange, kind of going through the northeast, through the northwest, through the middle belt down to the south. And the death totals there, the total number of deaths. Again, the region is Benin, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Chad, Mali, Niger, Togo. Again, some more charts, more numbers, figures for you to look at. Again, the orange is Nigeria, the blue is the region. Death Fulani, this is by Fulani militants. Again, 2010, 2014, we see significant activity in the middle belt area. But then take a look at this when we see the 2015. The increase is spread through down to the south, to the west, to the east. You see the rise, and this is about the time Buhari was elected president, 2015. 9,733 in Nigeria alone. Again, looking at the Fulani militants, the examples of discriminatory practices, attacks in Christian states. Now we can estimate from the states, by looking at this map, from the states, Kaduna, the southern Kaduna attacks, those are primarily, even in the mid to south, those are primarily Christian areas. Plateau is primarily a Christian area. Benue State is primarily a Christian area. Taraba State as well. So taking those figures, you see that in 2000 to 2014, there was 5,890 in those 4 states, 7,000 total. So you see the 4 states are primarily the largest recipients of the attacks from the Fulani militants. In 2015 to 2019, you have 7,000 deaths. So the increase, the numbers is staggering to see how from 14 years to just 4 years that we see these different the numbers. Boko Haram, again, 2010, 2014. The deaths up in that area is staggering as well with the Boko Haram attacks, and then it just keeps increasing from 2015, from the time Buhari took office to date. The incident reports and some eyewitness from the Benue State government, Governor Samuel Ortom's representative, who was sharing. They supplied a report to us, a lengthy report that they presented to the UN, and it was very well documented for their state. And then the 49% of the labor force killed by the armed Fulani militant herdsmen is just in 7 years is a terrible number to see. So we had an incident report from Travis State, Governor Darius Ishaku. And sorry, I'm running out of time here. I'm trying to get through this. Attacks against Christians. Leah Shrivu is still in captivity despite President Buhari's assurance that she'll be released. And in fact, more continue to be kidnapped nearly every week. We heard about some on Monday. Some aid workers that were kidnapped. We have people groups targeted and land taken over by Fulani militants, Rigwe people in Miango, the Adar Kingdom in Kaduna, Idoma and Agatu land. And then 2008 to 2014, Boko Haram attacked or destroyed over 80 churches in just 3 states alone, Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa. In fact, the number is probably in the hundreds if we documented other states and other places as well. So again, I thank you for the time. And we just want to be a voice for the martyrs, those who've paid the ultimate sacrifice by dying. With that, thank you, and turn it back over.
We had a major problem in Sudan back in the late 90s and early 2000s. President Bush in 2001 appointed Senator John Danforth to be the special envoy for Sudan. He was able to coordinate all of the activities of our government, the military activities, the hunger activities, the human rights activities, the religious freedom activities. He was also able to work with the UN. He was also able to work with our NATO allies, England, France, Germany, and many others to bring them in. And lastly, he was able to work with the United Nations, and then his credibility gave him such power that when he negotiated with the Sudan government, and if you may recall, in 2005, through the good efforts of Senator Danforth, the killing stopped and there became a new country. Southern Sudan broke off. And one of the powerful things is when his appointment was made, it was made in the Rose Garden at the White House, with Senator Danforth standing in one place. On one side was President Bush, on the other side was Secretary Colin Powell. So I believe to coordinate all the activities, we need a special envoy of the character, the quality, the integrity of a John Danforth who can coordinate all these activities. And by being appointed with that type of power, it would put pressure on the Nigerian government to respond to him. The last comment, every time America and the West has failed to deal with the issue of genocide, hundreds of thousands of people died. We know the failure of the West to deal with the issue of Darfur led to 300,000-400,000. And as you may recall, during Rwanda, there were cables coming in from Rwanda to the State Department, to the Secretary of State, and to many others. And the West and the UN failed to respond. And as a result of that, we lost 6, 7, maybe even 800,000 people in the Rwanda genocide. And if you read Henry Levy's column in the op-ed, he thinks what's taking place in Nigeria could very well lead to what took place in Darfur or even Rwanda. And that's why I think we need a special envoy for Nigeria and the Lake Chad region. For the Congress and the administration not to respond, it will be one of the first times with all this information available that the West did not respond.
Thank you so much, Congressman Wolf. Our next speaker is Dr. Gregory Stanton. He is the president of Genocide Watch, and he is going to be discussing genocide overall. Dr. Stanton, over to you. Yes, there we go.
To be with you this morning. It's a real honor, in fact, to be able to speak with Congressman Wolf, who I have admired for so many years. He's been a leader against genocide all through his career. He's the first congressman to go to Darfur. He's, I think, the first congressman to go to this one. And he's right. We need a special envoy. The reason we need it is that our current ambassador in Nigeria and many other people in the State Department are in denial about the genocide that is being committed in Hadas. Everybody knows that Boko Haram is this genocidal group because their leader was very direct in declaring his genocidal intention. You know, he said, all those clerics are to be killed. You know, this is a war against Christians. I mean, when you have that kind of express intention, it's pretty clearly genocide, and especially when you have that, what ICON has proven is 43,000, and it's at least documented that there are 27,000 people that Boko Haram has killed. So you have, in the case of Boko Haram, all the elements to prove genocide. The question is, do you have them for the Fulani jihadists? Well, I think this document by ICON proves that you do. This is a historic document that ICON has put together. It's very much like the document that the Knights of Columbus put together when we were trying to demonstrate to Congress that ISIS was committing genocide against Yazidis, Christians, Shia Muslims, and other religious groups in Syria and in Iraq. And as you know, that resulted in a unanimous resolution stating such. There are three things you've got to prove if you want to prove genocide. First of all, you have to prove that the acts of genocide have been committed. In other words, whether those acts are actual killing, which there's clearly been plenty of killing, whether there have been conditions of life deliberately intended to destroy the group. That has also happened with the Fulani jihadists and with Boko Haram, in which whole villages will be destroyed, the people driven out, the land taken over by the Fulanis, and an emirate declared. In other words, we have documentation already that over 130,000 acres of Nigerian land has been taken over by the Fulani militants. And it's probably even more than that. So the conditions of life, which is Article 2B of the Genocide Convention, is also satisfied. Or 2C, I'm sorry. The 2B is the infliction of a serious mental and physical harm to the group that's targeted. That's also obviously been occurring. All of the victims of the Fulani militants have been Christians. So the second element, in fact, is you have to show that the group that's being targeted is a protected group under the Genocide Convention. That means it has to be a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Well, that's clearly the case here, because we have a targeting of Christians. Sheku absolutely said that was their target, and it's clear now that the Fulani militias are also targeting Christians. They will wipe out a Christian village and leave a Muslim village nearby totally untouched. This is called genocide. The big problem is you also have to prove intent. What is the intent of these massacres? Now, on this score, that is where the legalists, the denialists have their field day. They say, oh, we just don't have enough evidence of intent. That, by the way, was Joan Donohue's argument against using the word genocide to describe the Rwandan genocide, which prevailed in the State Department for over 3 months at the height of the genocide. She is now a judge on the International Court of Justice. Watch out in the case of Myanmar. Her influence there is increased. Not only that, William Chavez, who is the lawyer for Myanmar in that case, puts forward the doctrine, which was taken up by the International Court of Justice, that genocide has to be the only intent. Now that's crazy. That is simply wrong in terms of criminal law. A prosecutor doesn't have to prove that a murderer's only intent was to kill someone. I mean, in other words, he doesn't have to prove that, he has to disprove that the motive or the intent might have been robbery that it might have been revenge, all these other things that could have been intent. In other words, in this case, what we have is a denial in which the intent is denied because of the dominant narrative. The dominant narrative is this is a herder-farmer conflict. Well, it isn't just a conflict. Of course there's a conflict, but what people don't understand is that conflicts can be accompanied by genocide, and that is what's happening here. I remember David Rawson, who was our ambassador in Rwanda, thought it was just a civil war, therefore it couldn't be genocide. The truth is most genocides occurred during civil wars or international wars. So what we've got here is a need to prove that this is intentional. Now, in order to do that, we need to show there is a coordinated pattern here. I think we can show that now. But what I would like to do is supplement this ICON report with a international commission of inquiry led by Nigerians. I think the Nigerian government has to be involved in this. But in which you have, for instance, members of parliament from the Netherlands like Peter Omtzigt, in which you have, House of Lords people. I can think of Baroness Cox, and she is one of the greatest people in the world for this, in which we had representatives from this country, from senators. It should be international, because what we need is a report, a commission of inquiry that will come out with a report saying, this is genocide. We've got to stop it. Now, the reason we have to stop it now is it's still in its early stages. I think that the prediction that this could become a really big genocide, it's already a big genocide, for goodness sake, when you've got, 50,000 people dead. But it could become much bigger. It could get like Darfur, as Frank has warned. It could get like Rwanda. That's why we have to stop it now. Now, what I think is this government in the US needs to take action. We need to provide training to Nigerian law enforcement people. Our FBI is ready to do it. I've talked to them about it. We need to have this International Commission of Inquiry. We need to fund it. We need to encourage the Nigerian government to create a strike force that will go after the perpetrators of these killings. Because remember this is not, all Fulanis. This is a group of militant jihadists. This is a criminal gang that is being organized by people that we need to track down. It's being financed also by people that we need to track down. And then I believe we need to mobilize the churches. I think that the churches in Nigeria could play a huge role in documenting and signaling the warning signs, saying, oh, a genocidal massacre occurred here. So those are my recommendations. I hope that we will do these things. I think that with Assistant Secretary Destro in the Human Rights Bureau and the State Department, we have a chance to do these things. And I also think we should get Congress to authorize this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stanton. Well, we're actually going to jump to Baroness Cox next, because you've already given her such a wonderful introduction. So Baroness Cox is going to be speaking next. She is from UK in the House of Lords, and she is going to briefly be sharing her passion and wisdom on advocating for Nigeria from the UK. So Baroness, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for letting me join this very important meeting. I bring you greetings from the United Kingdom and some news of what we've been trying to do there. I'm happy to say that we have an all-party parliamentary group on freedom of religion or belief, which has just published a report on Nigeria entitled Nigeria, Unfolding Genocide, ? And very happy to make that report available. And it does contain in it, you won't see it from there, but a photograph of some of us with Rebecca Sharibu, Leah Sharibu's mother, of course, suffering the agony of her daughter, having been missing for so long and still suffering, and who was kept as a slave because she refused to convert to Christianity, to Islam from Christianity. And the report is actually dedicated to Leah Sharibu. But very briefly, as CEO of Humanitarian Aid Relief Trust, or HEART, I've often had the painful privilege of visiting on many occasions some of the worst affected areas and have heard directly from survivors of attacks in northern states and in Central Belt. They have shared with immense bravery and with tears personal tragedies of mass slaughter, torture, amputations, rape, forced displacement, destruction of homes, churches, and farmland. And just give one or two examples to give a feeling what's behind the statistics. One lady, and I've met all these ladies, called Antonia from Karamai, told me, I quote, "I saw my brother-in-law's body on the ground, hacked to pieces by machete. Our home was destroyed. The hospital was burnt. They tried to burn the roof of the church by piling up the chairs like a bonfire." The pastor from Maduguri said, I quote, "Every day we carry new corpses to the cemetery. They kill farmers. They destroy our homes and churches. They kidnap and rape women." And finally, I also worked with Veronica from Dogonama, who told me, I quote, "They attacked me with machete twice, once to the neck and once to my hand. I saw the scars. Then she said they wanted my daughter to suck my finger. So they amputated my forefinger and I passed out. When I woke up, I saw my 6-year-old daughter on the ground, dead, with my top finger in her mouth." Similar harrowing testimonies were considered in detail in the report to the Foreign Secretary of the British government last year by the Bishop of Truro, in which he concluded, I quote, "Some of the most egregious persecution of Christians has taken place in sub-Saharan Africa. The most widespread and violent threat come from societal groups, including many with a militant Islamist agenda. Reports consistently showed that in Nigeria, month after month, on average, hundreds of Christians were being killed for reasons connected with their faith. The worst affected included Christian women and girls abducted and forced to convert, enter forced marriages, sexual abuse, and torture. I and many colleagues in Parliament have frequently sought to raise these serious concerns with the UK government with questions, debates, evidence to inquiries, and formal letters. But to date, the UK government's response has been woefully inadequate. Even as militant groups such as Boko Haram, Islamist Fulani, and ISWAP, the Islamic State West Africa province. In serious stuff, you've got ISIS there, deliberately and in a very coherent way, adding its jihadist agenda. As these sweep across the Sahel, imposing their radical ideologies with violence on those who refuse to comply, the UK government appears to underplay the scale of massacres, and refuses to acknowledge that a possible genocide may be occurring. The Nigerian government has also been seriously remiss in protecting its civilians and bringing perpetrators of killings to account. The causes of violence are, of course, complex, and our inquiry examines multiple drivers of conflict, including rapid population growth, climate change, and desertification, which have decreased the water available for land and grazing. But Her Majesty's government continues to hail those as the causes for the tensions and the conflict in these parts of Nigeria, and refuses to look at the scale and the seriousness of what we are talking about this afternoon. So given the escalation, frequency, organization, brutality, and asymmetry of attacks by Islamist Fulani militants against predominantly Christian communities, we argue that the UK must fulfill its obligations as a signatory to the 1948 Genocide Convention and its duty to protect. I emphasize and I conclude with saying that it is just not sufficient for our government merely to, quote, emphasize the importance of mediation and interfaith dialogue. These are important, but they do not in any way address the scale and horror of what is happening. And the longer these massacres and atrocities are tolerated, the more the perpetrators are emboldened. We give them a green light to carry on their killings and destruction with impunity. And may I just conclude by saying I'm happy to make available, if anyone would like to receive it, the copy of our last visit report. This was the Central Belt, and on the front is a burnt church, but there are many, many examples of the kind of atrocities which I've been describing in this report, together with a photograph of that young mum whose forefinger was amputated and stuck in her daughter's mouth. So we had a lot of first-hand evidence and case studies here, if anyone would like to receive that, and also very happy to send a copy of our all-party parliamentary group report, Nigeria Unfolding Genocide, ? Thank you for letting me share some of the pain and the passion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Baroness. I'm sure that there are multiple people who would like to receive that information. Our final speaker is Dr. Durham Magdalene from the Benue State Government. And Dr. Magdalene is going to be speaking on behalf of the victims of the terrorism within Nigeria. And just a side note, any questions regarding the victims of terrorism in Nigeria are going to be answered by Honorable Bundy, the Chief of Staff for the Governor of Benue State. So Dr. Magdalene, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak, and also for amplifying our voices and the plight of Christians in Nigeria. I speak on behalf of the Christians, victims of the attack, particularly those of us in the Middle Belt and what is popularly called North Central Nigeria. It has come under tremendous attack in recent years, which have, reached a crescendo, particularly after the election of our current president in 2015. We believe that these attacks are religious and ethnic based because of several reasons. In the first place, the attacks target churches. We have data on 162 churches destroyed in recent times in Benue State alone. We also have priests and pastors being targeted and killed. On the 24th of April 2018, for instance, in Benue, 2 priests that were officiating at Mass at a town called Aya, Balom in Gwe local government of Benue State, were attacked, they were killed, and 17 other parishioners also lost their lives. We also have a situation where when people are being attacked and you run into a mosque, then nobody attacks you further. But if you run into a church, you get attacked and killed. So the question on our mind is, why is it that when you run into a mosque, you don't get killed? But when you run into a church, you are still going to be attacked. And also you will find that most times imams or the Muslim leaders are being praised for protecting or saving the Christians who run to them for protection. When you run to a Muslim leader for protection, you get protected, but you cannot run to a Christian leader and get protected. So when you look at all of this and the dynamics, areas where the attacks are occurring, it is very clear that the Christian communities are the ones that are being targeted and wiped out. In Plateau State, for instance, we have a situation where some of the towns, they are overrun, and then the militants set up their own structures and rename such areas in their own languages. That's the Fulfulde, that's the Fulani militants. We have situations where the government of Benue, for instance, had written to the presidency before the 2018 attack and informed them to attack the state. Nothing was done. Another letter was sent to the vice president of Nigeria, who is a Christian and a pastor. Nothing was done until the attack of January 1st, 2018, when 73 Christians were killed. So we believe that it is all religious based, and it is set out to send the Christians out, wipe them out, and take over. Indeed, the spokesperson for the president, Femi Adesina, had argued when we were told that we could leave our ancestral homes so that we will stay safe. And we said, look, we have an attachment to our ancestral homes in Benue, for instance. He said, what are you talking about when you mention ancestral homes? Are you not better being alive than being buried 6 feet down? So even the security forces, we believe that they are also in connivance with the attackers. And this is more pronounced for us. Our belief is that it has to do with the fact that the entire security architecture of Nigeria is in the hands of the Muslims. The military, the Air Force, the SSS, all of them are being headed by Muslims. It has never been this bad for us in Nigeria. So for us, we also found that when we get the perpetrators, we know them. I had someone mention that we should begin to name. And yes, we do have names. For example, Alhaji Abdullahi Bodejo, who is the president of Mieti Allah Kautal Hori, the umbrella body for the Fulani tribe in Nigeria. They have come out openly to accept that they have done the killings. They have gone to national television, even international television, and accepted that they have done the killings. But they do this and they walk out and get into their cars and leave without any arrest being done. And even where we have gotten people, we have never heard of any prosecution of the people who have been arrested. So indeed, again, we would also say that apart from the displacements, we have situations where in Benue, like in Logo local government and Guma local government, part of the areas are already under the control of the Fulani militants. You dare not go there. I wish I had the time, because I have the data for January this year, January to this month, we just ended yesterday, June. We have 42 people killed. We have statistics of women who have been raped. And what is happening is there is a serious threat of food insecurity in our state, because once you attempt to go to the farm, you are either raped as a woman or you get killed. I have an instance where I was summoned in the middle of the night to come to the rescue of a woman who had just been picked in the farm. They were IDPs, they were in the camp, and she complained that she was hungry, she needed to get more food. She attempted to go to the farm with her husband, she was pregnant, and what they did was they just had shootings. And as they attempted to run, the husband left, but she was, they caught up with her. And what did they do? They stabbed this woman, they opened her legs, picked stones, long sticks, and tried to pull out the fetus from her tummy. And after that, they put stones in her privates. They left her for dead because she had, bled so much. But having left, she regained consciousness and crawled to the road. The husband ran to a nearby village, got some security people that were there, and some of them went to him and picked this woman. We took her to the hospital and she was treated. What we were told was that she might likely lose her womb. That was her first pregnancy, a girl of about 22. But luckily for us, by the following day, when they tried to operate, they discovered the fetus was intact. She has delivered of a baby boy. She's back in the camp and living there now. So we have situations where children are being killed. We have a lot of people who have been amputated. We have a lot of women who have been raped. And we have all this data that I could share with you, which I have personally verified. I can give you the name, the place, the time where this occurred, whether it is a child, whether it is a man or a woman. All this is happening to us in the Middle Belt particularly, but to most Christians, because I was in Adamawa State, which is in the core north, and part of Numan, which is a Christian area, is under severe attack. So you find that if you isolate the areas or communities where the attacks are ongoing, they are mostly Christian communities. So it has to do with religion. Now, I have a personnel that supports this position. We had been out in the field, and then suddenly we ran into an ambush, and as the gunshots rang out, we had Allahu Akbar. Some of the buildings that are destroyed, you will find Islamic writings on them. Some of the churches that are burned down, you find Islamic writings on them. So sometimes we wonder why the question is it really a Christian Muslim thing? It is very clear. For those of us who are living it, we are seeing it being manifested. So generally for us, We believe that this is a Christian Muslim thing. It is an agenda to take us out of our homelands or to ensure that we all become converted to Islam, because we have situations where they're adopting our daughters and forcing them to change. If you don't, then you get killed. They're abducting them and marrying them off. So
right.
a lot of
Dr. Magdalene
are ongoing.
Dr. Matt. Thank you. I'm sorry, we just have to move on because now we need to open up to questions. So thank you so much for everything you had to say. So now we are going to open up the floor to questions and answers. I will be reading off the names of people who have asked questions, and I will allow you to ask them yourselves. We do ask that you say specifically which topic you would like to discuss and that you ask your question to a specific speaker, just so it's easier for everybody to know which questions they will be answering. So our first question is going to go over to Anne. Anne, I believe you're going to be unmuted right now, and you can go ahead and ask. I think you have 2 questions on here. You can go ahead and ask your questions right now.
Thanks a lot for that. First of all, more of a technical question. I understand from Kyle that the report has not yet officially been launched. And of course, we're in the midst of COVID-19. So the question on that is, have you been able to plan like an official global launch of, I think, a very vitally important report that you've produced? And then after that, I have more specific or more questions on more substance in terms of campaigning.
Yeah, I think let me speak to that. And this is Stephen. We are looking to July 21st to make this report global. So we'll be sending information regarding that.
Okay, so basically whatever we've tried to raise, and we've met with some of the investigators at the International Criminal Court a few years ago, and they always ask the question, who's behind it? So this summer, I have some wonderful interns from Regent Law School and other universities that are working on trying to figure out the names of those who may be behind it, either perpetrating the actual violence or even trying to justify the violence in ways that expose the fact that they're just making excuses and may actually be behind it, or thirdly, that they're actually inciting violence. We really need a list of names. We hear over and over again that there's US mechanisms to do visa bans. The other thing, if we had some names and also of organizations, then we may be able to get it designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Faith, I'm sure, remembers, our organization and others, we went after Boko Haram to get it designated as a foreign terrorist organization, and under the Obama administration, that took 3 years. And so, but to get there, we really need to have some names. And I appreciate the fact that one name was just given by Dr. Madelyne Dura, but we really need those names. And so I encourage that. And also would love to see if we could have a campaign to focus on getting a foreign terrorist organization designation. Fulani militants is too broad, so a more specific organization, if possible. Thanks.
Thank you. Kyle, did you want to make a comment on that, or should we go on to the next question?
I think it's big. I think that's the whole reason for this call, is to show our information. But then as we talk to people like Emma and Jubilee and Dr. Greg and other people, that we can get these names, we can get a report forward. So I think it's it's still a lot to do, as she says. So I appreciate that. So Stephen, anything to add to that?
Well, we ran into this problem of trying to, when you say Fulani headers, I can tell you that we have Christians who are Fulani, and then we have some Muslims who have never taken to terrorism. So now, but we have the militant Fulani who actually are acting like a proxy to Boko Haram because their mode of operation is similar. So we just have to take a particular nomenclature for this, and we have it's provable, and even most Fulani community that we've interacted, we agree that they are militant. So for me, reducing the designation to anything will still meet this mischaracterization, and also people will say, hey, why not headers? And if you say headers, you implicate a lot of peaceful Fulani, especially those who are Christians. And we have actually interacted with Fulani Muslims, Fulani Christians, and they really love the designation Fulani militants.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Anne. Our next question comes from Julie Weber. I believe she's been unmuted, and it has to do with non-extremist Muslims. So Julie, you can go ahead and ask your question to a specific speaker.
Thank you, Lydia. My question is for Dr. Dura. I have heard that Boko Haram and some of the Fulani herdsmen are attacking non-extremist Muslims as well, just as much as they're attacking Christians. Is that what you've heard or experienced?
Can you have your question again?
Julie asked if non-extremist Muslims are being targeted as well with the violence.
Yeah. Non-extremist Muslims are also being targeted because for those that are conservative, we have a situation where we had a military person in Benue who had been posted to Benue State, but was non-extremist. He was not condoning it. He was arresting them, and they targeted and attacked him.
All right, thank you. Our next question comes from, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it. Let's go to Didi Logison. Actually, Didi, can you go ahead and make your question known while we figure out the other question?
So thank you, everyone, for that. If anybody information on the Medellin Association for designation, Ambassador Brownback is requesting that right now. I had a claim just yesterday, also requesting that the issue of Nigeria be blown up by all of the assorted organizations who are concerned about this over the next 2 months. Apparently, the Secretary of State will make his internal designations within at the end of about 70 days, and then that will be made public end of November, early December. But he is he reached out to us and asked specifically that I let everybody know that we really need to blow this up as much as we possibly can. So I did let him know that on July 21st, our ICON was planning a release of a report. I didn't give him any details on that as that's not public. But he was happy to hear that, and he said that he will be speaking publicly on this. Talk with him about the farmer herder issue, and so we're looking, we're hoping that he won't continue that narrative, but wanted to let everybody know that this is of great concern to him. So I'm looking for Mayeti Allah designation information. If you want to send it to me, I can get it to him or send directly to Ambassador Brownback's office. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you especially for saying that, because we're very concerned about the latest report came out of the State Department. It does adopt this, what I call denialist narrative. It in fact quotes several French social theorists who tried to dispute Bernard-Henri Lévy's reports about this genocide. Saying, oh, no, it's much more complex. It's a herder-farmer conflict. This whole conflict narrative is standing in the way of recognizing a genocide. It is not just a conflict between farmers and herders. It is turned out to be, in fact, a genocide. So that's why, and I'm very worried about the report that was just issued by the U.S. State Department that, in fact, adopts this farmer-herder narrative and even quotes from these French theorists who, by the way, denied that genocide was imminent in Rwanda also, the same people.
Yeah, I was very specific with Ambassador Brownback on the roundtable this Tuesday. I pretty much I raised him on it, and we did discuss that quite a bit yesterday when we conversed. So I really pushed on him to stop that narrative. So thanks.
Thank you. Baroness Cox, do you have a comment on what was just said?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Lydia?
Yes, can you hold on one second? I believe Baroness Cox has a statement she wants to add to what Dr. Stanton just said.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Well, first of all, I'm very sorry I have to leave because you have a parliamentary meeting in about 5 minutes' time. For us, it's the afternoon. So I've been hugely privileged to be part of this. Just 2 points I'd make amongst the last two speakers. One is we're very careful whenever we talk about the Fulani, we always add the word Islamist beforehand, so we're not confusing them all into a single designated and atrocious category. We do make that distinction. It's very important to do that. And secondly, I'm sorry that your official government seems to have the same position as ours. It is a real battle to get the British government to do anything other than say they're complex factors and desertification is a big factor and so on. Yeah, there may be some killings, but we're having a real battle with our government. So if there's any way at all we could combine forces to get the truth out there, I'm totally at your service. But it's been a privilege to be with you. I'm sorry to have to leave you, but we have a parliamentary meeting on Armenia where there are still problems. Thank you so much, and I look forward to being in touch, and we'll send those reports. Perhaps you'd like to let me know who might like to receive them. Thank you very much, and leave you with my very, very great gratitude and congratulations. Bye.
Thank you, Baroness, so much for adding that. All right, so thank you, Nina Shea, for being so patient. Questions over to you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just want to compliment both Caroline Cox's reports and the especially that all-party parliamentary group report is an important, really an important addition to this this struggle to get recognition for what's happening to the Christians, as is the ICON report. It's very, very impressive, and I think it will very much help the effort. And my concern is that there be something institutionalized in the US, by the US government, not just ephemeral statements and speeches and even op-eds, but although that would all be good too. And by institutionalized, I mean, most immediately, as Dee Dee said, there, from 90 days from the issuance of the Religious Freedom Report, which came out in early June, the law requires Secretary Pompeo to make a determination on country of particular concern status for Nigeria and other countries. And that is the inflection point. That is a date we need to keep in mind. I'm pushing for CPC, country of particular concern. That's the world's worst abuser of religious freedom, persecutor. It is, as you know, on the watch list currently, which is good, but it's not what it deserves. I also am pushing for the re-release of the Nigerian chapter. So that institutionalizes the anti-Christian attacks. And I'm astonished by, I attended, some of you may have also, the conference that CSIS held yesterday with its new report that was commissioned by USAID a year or two ago or three ago on Nigeria. It has a lot of good insights in it. I commend it to you to study. But it doesn't discuss the anti-Christian attacks at all by Boko Haram, and the report is mainly focused on Boko Haram. So it's just mystifying how there is this continual silence and silencing and self-censorship about what is happening, the religious component of it. CSIS had a think tank, which is a think tank here in Washington, had a speaker to speak about the report, who is an academic, a student from Nigeria, who was sympathetic to Boko Haram. He said when it came out, when it was first started, because it was a religious organization, but now he has decided it's no longer religious, it's just a criminal organization. And that was the main speaker to introduce this report for USAID. Similarly, the Council on Foreign Relations has a Nigerian tracker done by a former ambassador to Nigeria from the United States. It tracks different attacks. It's meticulous, except it never talks about religion and religious attacks, anti-Christian attacks. So there is a whole, it's not just the media, it's the scholarship behind it. That's why your report today and the British report are so important. And I hope there will be further documentation, but I also think that we have in the next, as Dee Dee said, 70 days or so left to really get the state to correct their mistake, because I do not understand how we can have such a good constellation of appointees now in these positions and the infrastructure, thanks to Congressman Frank Wolf and the International Religious Freedom Act, we have that all set up in state, and we still have this terrible failing stemming, as I understand it, from the embassy in Abuja. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina Shea, so much. So we are quickly drawing close to the hour, so we're gonna take about 2 more questions and maybe have 2 more comments, and then we will close off. And if you have any questions that have not been answered, please feel free to email them to me, and we will make sure to get you your question answered as soon as possible. So our next question comes from Julia Bicknell. I believe she has been unmuted. Julia, if you have a question or comment you'd like to ask, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm also in London. I just really welcome your interest, and to be honest, it's been a very difficult story to report over the last 6, 7, 8 years. I think the difficulty, I think the ICON report is great. I think it's brought a lot of data, but I would say that we still need detail. For instance, people will talk about weapons, high-grade weapons that the Fulani militant extremists use. And I've just recently made contact with some experts on weapons in conflict, but we just have too little detail. So I think my plea to the group today is, if we can continue to collaborate on the detail, that makes it much more compelling. I was a BBC journalist for 30 years, and so I know what you need to produce to convince the sort of global audiences. And I agree with all the points that have been made. So I don't really have a question per se. I'm trying to sort of throw out, ways of connecting and the issues that I'm experiencing on the chat bar as much as anything. But thank you for letting me speak anyway.
Thank you, Julia. We have one more person that we would like to be able to give a comment, and that is Piero Tosi. I believe he has been unmuted. If you have a comment that you'd like to give, please go ahead.
Yes, hi, this is Piero. Can you hear me? Yeah, no, I just, in the chat room, I made the comment that we need as much specificity as possible, so we can have, work on the Magnitsky sanctions or whatever. For example, Miyetti Allah, there are 2 Miyetti Allah organizations, and to the extent that we can, the basics, who, what, where, when, as much detail as possible, because all too often the information that we receive is general. So just want to encourage those to provide as much information as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Piero. So we are at the hour. I'm now going to pass it over to Stephen and Nada to close us out. Stephen?
All right, thank you, everybody. But before I close, please, I want to give just 30 seconds to Ambassador Uche Ajulu, who was a former ambassador from Nigeria to South Africa. Please, just 30 minutes, and then we close out from there. Ambassador Uche, please unmute her.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And then I will call you to give you some of the names of the confidential requests that have been made on the platform. Thank you. My view, which I represent the 2 coalitions, the Alibo Development Foundation, and the Igbo Christian Coalition Restoration Assembly, ICRAN, which covers the southeast and the south-south areas of pan-Igbo civil societies that are coming together to form a church-based response to the current challenges we are facing. Generally, the opinion of these groups are, yes, we agree with most of the issues highlighted in your reports, which give details. But we note that there is a fundamental disconnect on the causal factors, which is the artificial state formation that brought incompatible nation states together. We would like this group and the Commission of Inquiry to note that America did not take part in the Berlin Conference that brought artificial nation states together, and that there has been an enduring and subsisting conflict situation that has gradually degenerated into genocide and will ultimately implode into war if the issues of the fundamental causal factors of artificial state formations and the differential development of contemporary nation states, artificial nation states, are emerging. I would like an opportunity to give Stephen a 2-page document on this view, which is very strong and which is very fundamental. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Uche. Thank you, everybody. We'll be communicating our public outing for the 24th of July on this particular data. We appreciate all your contribution and we'll be in touch with you. Thank you so much for your time. God bless you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.